Just Mason and I today, so you're gonna have to bear with us. No Jeremy, but we have a good show. We're excited for your questions. Let's get it going.
The New Orleans Pelicans select Zion Williamson. And Holiday, the dribble penetration. So tough going to the goal.
Welcome, everybody. And I see that Jay is already in the chat. He will be with us in spirit. We're doing what every team is doing at this time of year. We're tactically resting people down the stretch to preserve lottery odds, aka family life. Mason, how's that going? I know you're going to be a little sidetracked with Texas playing in the background.
Yep. I mean, we're on Texas up borrowed time at this point, but yeah, going well. Fun game to watch today. Mixed feelings about the win, obviously, but at the same time, leave it to the Pelicans to actually play a competitive game when I had something else to watch. It's usually it's the blowouts when you just like nothing else but the Pelicans tonight, and they lose by 30, and then when there's other stuff going on, naturally it's a good game. But hey, it was fun.
Yeah, somebody in the Discord was like, "Oh, I know the Pelicans are going to win tonight because you guys are going live," and I was like, "That's pretty funny." So I guess there's a couple of things for us to talk about. First and foremost, in the previous game, Trey Murphy goes down, basically opening possession, 30, 40 seconds in, diving for a loose ball in what is diagnosed as a labrum tear and a partial rotator cuff tear. He has been ruled out for the season. There's not been a determination made yet on whether he needs surgery or whether he's going to go through rehab. Sometimes these injuries take a while to make that determination. Sometimes you take one course of action first, aka the rehab, and you're like, okay, maybe surgery is needed. So that is something Trey and his team will weigh considerably. But man, what a gut punch! Like seriously, what do the Pelicans like? What do they have to do to retain anything nice going for them?
Yeah, brutal. Every time there is something good, some sustained success for this team, in the form of a player, really, because there hasn't been a sustained success on the court for the team as a whole in terms of wins and losses. But it just feels like anytime we're seeing something to get excited about, whether it's DeJounte and now Trey, something bad happens. This is really the among a series of cursed seasons throughout this franchise's history in New Orleans. This might be the most cursed.
It's certainly up there. I mean, look, I'm not going to draw any comparisons to what's going on in Dallas, but they're also experiencing some kind of insane shit. But the Pelicans, look, I'm with our guy F Funky here who's in the chat, says the ethical tanking has to be rewarded. All this blood, sweat, tears, all these games that all of you guys have watched, all of like we've watched, them just getting blown out by 46 points at home to the Pistons, tying a franchise record. These kind of games, there's got to be some kind of benefit, right? There's got to be some kind of reward there. I think so. Here's the question for you, which I think was a conversation topic when the Trey injury happened, and the conversation topic was that Trey had his previous 21 games or so was playing averaging 37 minutes a game. They after All-Star break it had come down from 37 minutes a game to about 35. There was no reason, there's no other team that is in the Pelicans lottery positions or comparable in the standings that is playing their best players that much to that level of minutes, and it applies to Zion too. If you draw a parallel to the Jazz, who our guy John here mentioned is the Jazz are playing Catan while everyone else is I guess the Pelicans are playing tic-tac-toe. I don't fully understand that analogy, but I like it. I like the energy there. I love Catan. John, we got to play. Catan is my game. But there is the point I'm trying to get at is the Pelicans are still playing their main guys, their core guys, a ton of minutes. Where are you at on that? And do you feel like there was any correlation between Trey's minute usage and that injury?
The latter, it feels like the obvious answer would be no, because it's, the first minute of the game. It's a hustle play. It's not a, I don't get the sense that that's much of a wear and tear injury. But I guess if you have Trey consistently banging underneath with other big players trying to get boards, maybe there's some residual wear over time. But I do think that I have broader concerns about the first point you made, which is the minutes that their best players are playing, and because the obvious argument, the easiest one to make, would be a contract extension, right? You players playing big minutes because they're up for an extension or trying to get their new contract for another team. That's not the case with Trey. It's not the case with that's the frustrating part to me is that, like, that's not. You could make the argument for CJ, I guess. But when it comes to Trey Murphy, and given his position is the kind of like a huge piece of this franchise moving forward, and even with Zion, I mean, it is a little frustrating. Agnostic of the lottery piece, just like this year, there's nothing that's going to come from winning games at any point the rest of the season anyway, even before you think about the benefit of losing games. So I find it a little bit frustrating.
Yeah, I'm with you in that there isn't much of an end game playing these kind of minutes, and I'm also with you in the front that I don't think the two are related in terms of his minutes usage and his injury, right? Though I am sure there's like the risk probabilities probably rise,
Sure.
in general, just if you're playing fatigued or if you've got that much wear and tear. But like in this situation, it's such a freak injury that these kind of risk probabilities are probably going from 0.00001% to 0.00001.5%. And so it's like, okay, well, like that, that's not something that's meaningful or predictive data that you can be like, hey, like our medical team or our data inputs were telling us this one thing. We went against that advice, and now we are reaping the benefits of our decision. But that's not what I don't think that's what happened there. What is going to suck is that this is the second shoulder related injury that the Pelicans have seen on their team this year that's taken a guy out for the season. Herb Jones also had a labrum tear. Don't remember specifically if he also had an associated rotator cuff tear, but I do feel like there was something. Now, Herb had two things that are going on. In the first time, he was able to rehab and get back on the court. The second time, it took him out for the season. Now, Will Guillory had a piece this morning in the Athletic where he signified that maybe there is a chance that Herb is not ready to start the season. And maybe there's a chance that Trey's recovery, takes somewhere up to 6 months or takes a longer period. And you're potentially facing a future where you don't have DeJounte back probably until December or January at the earliest. And you're missing your two starting wings. And that is a situation the Pelicans are looking at. Now, let's assume worst case scenario here for a second that none of those guys.
Why would we assume anything different with this franchise?
Right? Let's assume that scenario here for a second that none of these guys are ready to start the season. Does that change your approach heading into this summer and how you tackle the offseason? And if it does change it, like to what degree and how?
There's shades of gray there, right? When you say not ready to start the season, I mean, what are you saying? Like, let's just put a number out there.
Let's
like
say Thanksgiving.
Let's
say Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so a month or so. I think it has to. I mean, it's not the message you want to send to the fan base, right? But at the same time, you can message your way around the offseason changes a little differently than you can message around losing games during the season. But we've lived the Western Conference now for a long time, and starting slow, this is, not I don't think you can expect what happened in the Phoenix Suns series year to be the norm, where they can claw out of that such a large hole and sneak into the play-in. I think there are a lot of teams that are going to be fighting even more this next year than we saw this year, because of the Cooper Flag sweepstakes, so to speak. But you can't play with a month deficit. You just can't do it. And I guess the only thing you're hanging your hat on is the last month of Zion and how good he's been. And you have to kind of sell yourself on, is that enough to keep the Pelicans out of a huge hole that they can't come out of? But I do think it has to change their decision making to an extent. Being realistic, but then there's can the front office afford to do that? That I think that's also a fair question. Like, can Griff do that and survive?
That is such a interesting question, right? Because you look at what's transpired this season. They're headed down a franchise low when it comes to winning. I don't think they'll hit the record, but they're going to get quite close to it. They're staring in the face of 60 losses, right? That is a very real possibility. And so, if that's the case, to your point about messaging, I think there are a few things that they can do, right? And the number one thing here is who they end up drafting. If they end up drafting Cooper Flag, there's very little messaging that needs to be done. It's kind of built in for you, right? We got Cooper Flag. This year's about Cooper Flag, and every other player, as they filter back in, we're gonna incorporate them, but it's about Cooper Flag and Zion. I don't know. Maybe they mistake maybe they did the same mistake as they did with Zion. It's like, this is not Cooper's team. This is Drew Holiday's team. Herb Jones is going to be the MVP. But no, I mean, they do have a guy that is already supposed to be the face of the franchise and is actually, with the way he's playing right now, capable of getting himself in the MVP conversation. That is not actually an absurd thing to say. So, but my overall point is the marketing, the message to the fans, they take care of themselves. Come watch Cooper play basketball. People are going to come watch Cooper play basketball. That's the thing that's going to happen. Win or lose, they're going to come. The second thing is, it kind of depends on the timeline here. Can you tread water for a month? Now, Pelicans were unable to tread water with Zion and BI and Herb and CJ early to start the season. DeJounte was the guy out, Trey was the guy out. They couldn't tread water. Now, the version of Zion we had early in the season is a dramatically different version of Zion than the one that is playing right now. The one that is playing right now is probably treading water with that group, Can they make enough additions in the offseason that allow them to tread water, right? They've been in situations in the past where BI's missed extended time, CJ's missed extended time, and Zion and the defensive-minded hustle guys have, they've won 7 out of 8 games before. They've gone on little sprees where they've gone, okay, we've won 6 of 10 or something like that, where it's depending on the opponent, depending on how well Zion's playing, it ends up working. So I think there's a couple of good points being made here in the chat. Number one right here is We Can Tread Water by Thomas Wintringham. Thomas says, we can tread water if we get a new coach. So let me get your thoughts. I know you said Griff. We'll get to Griff here in a second. Let me get your thoughts on that. And yeah.
I don't buy that. I'm not someone who thinks Willie Green is the right coach or the best coach of this franchise, but without going into too much detail, I mean, I'm very much of the opinion, and I've talked about this with you plenty of times, that unless you're at the very top or very bottom of the stack rank on coach, as far as head coaches go, you're not making a material difference on the win-loss record. It's all about the guys you have on the floor. And so I don't think Willie falls into that. I don't think he's such a bad coach that he's actively costing the Pelicans wins, especially in a scenario where they're at a talent deficit. I don't think he's doing more to hurt them. And so I don't think that that's going to fix anything.
Yeah, I mean, I lean to your side of views on this in general. I do think that nailing the coaching hire, if that is the direction they decide to go in, especially if it's early in the summer, can inform roster decisions and help you build out and acquire guys that might fit what that coach is trying to do. And
Sure.
that in and of itself might give you a win or two extra, because now the coaching philosophy is aligned with the roster philosophy. But it's still, like,
Yep.
like you said, it's very much dependent on who is putting on that Pelicans jersey. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that's that. There's a hypothetical that I asked in the Discord that I wanted to ask you, which I think really only comes into play if the Pelicans are not blowing it up and trying to be semi-competitive next year. You have CJ's $30 million expiring in hand right now. He is a capable guard, albeit, probably checked out this season and stretched a little bit thin, but he's a capable guard that gives you um, semi-consistent production. Like, you know what you're going to get from him
Yep.
on average, right? You have the MLE available. Functionally, when I last checked the Pelicans cap situation, in terms of signing people, like the amount of room they have under the tax, they can fit an MLE level guy, but that's about it. I mean, like, barring minimums and like the pick that's coming and all that. What I'm trying to say is they have a second exception with Kelly, the Kelly Olynyk, Brandon Ingram stuff that happened. They'll
Mhm.
probably not be able to use that to add another guy without sending salary out, right? They can't absorb like $20 more million of salary if you combine the two exceptions. So let's just assume you only have like the 13-ish million with the MLE, and that's available to you. Would you rather hold on to CJ and use the MLE at a different position of need? Let's say center, like starting center. And some of the guys that might be available for the MLE at starting center this summer are Clint Capella. So let's say a Clint Capella level player. Would you rather that combo, or would you rather trade CJ for, drum roll please, DeAndre Ayton and use the MLE on a guard like Malcolm Brogdon or Ty Jerome, or I'm trying to think of some of that. I mean, I would say Chris Paul, but we've had the Chris Paul discussion. Tyus Jones is going to be available. I don't think the Phoenix thing really worked out for him. So would you rather go down that route, or would you go down the other route?
I think I would rather hang on to CJ and go get. Well, actually, hold on. What's the contract you're giving Clint Capella in this scenario?
Whatever Jonas just got from Washington. So
Okay.
like 330 with like the final year not guaranteed, something like that.
Yeah, I think I think based on the players on the floor and who I think is what the best combination is to go win games, I think I would hang on to CJ, keep Capella, and then because you could still flip CJ, right? If you
Sure.
choose to.
For information that you may not have had, but you may know this, I'm just making it clear. Ayton isn't expiring, and he makes virtually the same amount of seed. He'll make a little bit more.
Yeah.
He'll make a little more.
They're the same. They're interchangeable, effectively. The two
Yeah.
contracts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'd rather that. It's not a landslide. I think it's. I don't think you expect it to be a landslide in either direction, but I think that's what I prefer by a little bit. What's your take?
Yeah, look, I mean, Ayton's just a name I threw out there. I think someone mentioned John Collins. I would, so John mentioned moving Kelly and the Indiana pick for a sign and trade for John Collins. I would want to hold on to CJ for something of value. I would not send a first round pick for an expiring John Collins, and certainly not Kelly. Like, that's not something I would do. But if it's CJ flipping for John Collins, like, that's something, we talked about in the past. Like, in a 3-team deal, blah, 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 blah. The net output is CJ out, Collins in, or CJ out, Aiden in, or someone of that effect or that caliber. I would want to send CJ out. And I think there's on-court reasons for it and there's off-court reasons for it. The on-court reasons is I want to not block any of the theoretical guards that the Pelicans may draft. Because after Cooper Flagg, you're looking at Dylan Harper, VJ Edgecombe, maybe Ace Bailey, right? But that guy is not a guard, but that's someone that would really be impacted there. But Trey Johnson, your guy at Texas right now, those kind of things I would want to solidify minutes for. Two, I think empowering Zion and Trey and Herb, those guys to be the actual voices in the locker room, like that's what I would want. So that's kind of like the approach that I'm heading in there with. And I think the guard market at the MLE level might be better than the big market. Because I think outside of Capella, like I was looking at it, like you're not all the other bigs are going to get priced out. I think because I don't think you're going to be able to get Brook for the MLE, and I don't think you're going to get Turner for the MLE. So like Capella is like the only starting level guy. I mean, Naz Reid is going to get what $25-30 million. Aldama is not someone that's going to be available for the MLE. So like that's where I'm at. I'll even put it this way: like you could do CJ for like Vucevic, right? Like I don't care, just give me a starting center. That's a relative expiring. The guard market, I think Ty Jerome would be the guy I would look at, who I think could be plug and play in terms of like he gives you a lot of what CJ gives you with the shooting, capable ball handler, probably looking for a bigger role. Cleveland might not be able to afford him with Mobley's money kicking in next year. And so he's someone I think shakes through the cracks there. And he told Paulo, I could start on your team. He would start on the Pelicans. So yeah, that's really one that I'm looking at. But I think if they do make a move like that, they can tread water. Like, for example, in this hypothetical world, let's say you moved CJ for John Collins. You're starting Ty Jerome, Zion, Kelly Olynyk, John Collins, and then you basically, and if Herb and Trey are out, maybe you're putting Brandon Boston out there, or maybe it's Hawkins or whoever. You don't love that, but I think it's tread waterable. It's not English.
Yeah, fair enough. Man, I haven't gotten away from the notion that Brook Lopez, a guy who is 37, he'll be 37, I think. This is going to make like well or more than MLE money. Like good for him, man. Like that's not something I would have believed if you told me that a half dozen years ago, right?
The reason I'm saying that is like I feel like Brook's going to want to stay on teams that are very, very good. Yeah, and so the cost of him coming to the Pelicans is like it's going to be more than the MLE. I could be wrong. Maybe that's a guy that they've been recruiting all along, and he's like, it worked with Giannis, it'll work with Zion. Let me go chill out there, right? And only got to play 20 minutes because Eve's there, Kelly's there, like they have a big man, Carlo's there. No,
I like. I mean, I definitely respect the notion of getting CJ off the team to empower the rest of the roster. I think CJ's done his time in New Orleans, and so I think taking that step to move on and having that be a reason to do it again is a good one that I hadn't considered. And like I said, I mean, I think I don't see I don't see major meaningful on-court differences between the two options. And I know it's hard because everything's a hypothetical, right, about what's players, but I do like that concept of just getting CJ to move on and next men step up. Yeah,
it's kind of like CJ as a player. His voice was tethered to Willie. He was a conduit for Willie, very much so. I think if you're moving on with a new coach, you let that coach come in fresh without any of the old guard, and it's okay. You build a connection with Zion, you empower him. You build a connection with Trey, you empower him. Same thing with Herb. That's why you're here, right? You're not here for the guy on the expiring contract. And so, yeah, I think that's a funny thing. Here's a good comment from mimicking the government, and they say trade plus the top pick equal water slide. I assume that's in reference to us talking about treading water. And yeah, look, I think there is a world where one of these guys that you end up drafting contributes sooner than you think, right? And let's say it's the number 2 pick and you get Dylan Harper. In that situation, I want CJ out of there with swiftness. And I'm trying to solidify the big position. And you telling me I can use an MLE to shore up the guard rotation? Great. But like, I'm starting Dylan Harper day one. That's like, cool. I'm throwing you into the fire. We're building it around that. You get to work with Zion and whatever bigs that are on the team and whoever's a healthy perimeter player. Like that's what you're doing. So I think just in terms of that, there's like so many more guard minutes that are going to be available that I feel comfortable with. The other treading water option is the one that we've routinely talked about here, is trading that top pick if for a good player, for a starting caliber player. And especially if you're able to put DeJounte in there, now you're taking salary that is not on the court for you and turning it into salary that is on the court for you, which by virtue, like, creates depth and opportunity. So like, if they're able to get us a bonus, I think they can tread water. If they're able to get a LaMelo, they can tread water for 10 games, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But there's options there. I agree with Jeremy in the chat. We do appreciate everyone that is here. Thank you for beating the algorithm and helping us with the show. Appreciate that. Now I want to. What, you're gonna say something?
Thanks. No, thanks for helping me avoid this Longhorns collapse. I don't need to be watching this on TV. So
they're collapsing. Oh, great.
Oh yeah, they're down 5. 10 seconds left. Yep.
Love that. Okay, so now to the main portion of the show. I have a very, very important question for you. Is Zion aura farming?
What? Yes and no. The answer is yes and no.
Talk me through it.
The answer is yes, because this team isn't going anywhere. And but the answer is no, because he's legitimately doing great things. It's not all smoke and mirrors. Like, it's the best basketball he's played in his career, like we talked about last episode.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't know. He's kind of got like all the hallmarks. They were down 43 points and he put Isaiah Stewart on a poster. Is that not aura farming? Like, wait. So I need the kids to tell me what's going on.
Yeah. I'll let you know when I see him do it again on Sunday up here in Detroit.
Yeah, no, I think part of the reason I made this title was because I wanted to see what your reaction would be specifically. I'm sad that we don't have Jeremy here right now. I know he would have a ton to say. So
he just said something.
Here we go. He said, 3 middle-aged men talking about aura farming. We are in the last and evil days. That is Jeremy in the comments for our audio-only listeners. But look, any reason to kind of talk about the good stuff that's going on with the Pelicans, right? We can talk about the doom and gloom. It's very easy to do, but there are legitimately cool things happening on the court when Zion plays. The Pelicans ended up winning tonight, which honestly didn't really impact their lotto odds all that much. They're in a weird situation where the top 3 are kind of out of reach. They could probably hit it if they were aggressive about tanking. I just don't think that's something that they're going to do. And then the 5th spot is 4 games back, 5 games back. I don't know. There's a gap. We got to pull up the old Tankathon, tankathon.com. And yeah, Philly Philly is 4.5 games back as of right now. So, there's an important matchup against Philly coming up. It's the second night of a back-to-back. We know Zion won't be playing on the second night of a back-to-back. Let's talk about his on-court play against the Wolves. We can start with the defense. Thomas says his defense has been really, really good. What did you notice tonight, specifically on the defensive end with Zion?
I think we were joking about the Discord a little bit, but I think Zion just generally he enjoys and feels invigorated playing against Rudy Gobert for whatever reason. Maybe just because of his reputation defensively, but I think just the same, a lot of the same things that we've been seeing over the last month or so. I think just getting in passing lanes, deflections, just being incredibly active. I mean, I was just looking to see how many steals he ended up with. Three steals. Channeling his inner Dyson Daniels, so to speak. Filling in.
Is Dyson aura farming? Dude, I see him on my I open up Instagram and then I'm like scrolling through and I get an advertisement and it's Dyson fucking Daniels in some kind of weird like athleisure wear. And I'm like, is that Dyson? Is he starting to get fucking like endorsements with some kind of athleisure brand? I don't know. I think Dyson's aura farming. 190 steals or whatever he is ahead of the next person. That's excessive. You don't need to do that.
Oh man. Yeah, but that's, I think that is beyond just like the, getting into passing lanes and just having active hands, whether he's guarding the ball or not guarding the ball. I think it's just the relentless effort. We talked last episode about his minutes and how they're being managed and allows him to really be every bit of the best version of himself while he's out there. I certainly think that has something to do with it too, versus playing longer stretches, maybe tiring down as the game goes on. It's clear that, his stamina is better than it was, and also how he's being played from a minutes distribution perspective is allowing him to be a force on both ends instead of just exerting everything he has on offense and taking breaks on the defensive end to recharge,
I agree, Jeremy. They are padding Dyson steals like JJJ's blocks. But Mason, I think there's a moment that I wanted to call out tonight. It was in the fourth quarter. Zion had picked up his fifth foul, and then the Wolves were trying to hunt him, and Zion was not shying away from the hunt. There were moments that you could kind of like prevent the switch, but he was actively staying at the point of attack and like saying like, this is where I want to stay. And Anthony Edwards attacked him a couple of times down the stretch. Both times Zion slid his feet really well, met him, with force and physicality, and got to stop like 2 times in a row. And to the point where like, I'm like, okay, I get the process here. You're trying to foul Zion out, and maybe, you think that he's not that great of a defender. But there was a moment that Anthony Edwards had Jose on him. He had Jose on him. And look, Jose is awesome, but Ant's going to go through Jose. And he called up Julius Randle for the screen just to try to get Zion on him. And I'm like, this is dumb offense. This is why the Wolves are going to lose. Like, this is absolutely stupid. But, credit to Zion. He was bringing it tonight. Obviously the fouls were what they were. He had a moment, I think it was in the second quarter, where it was like layup, assist, layup. And it was just like the quality of assists that he had was like someone, I think it was CJ Folger on Blue Sky. He was like, this is Zion just decided to turn into Jokic. And it was like, yeah, this is like he was downloading the Wolves defensive rotations in his brain and making the computation in an instance and being like, okay, cool. Like they sent 2 here. This guy's open. This is where they sent the help from. I'm going to sling a pass to the corner. Boom, corner 3. Okay, I have the ball at the slot. They're showing a lot of help. Carlos in that opposite dunker. See ya. I'm going to just lob it all like over the defense, and Carlos going to get like it was the way he was controlling the offense and the way he was moving guys around like chess pieces is not something I've seen him do at this level like ever before. Like he had a comment on it. about how he's just getting like, trying to get like more, he's getting more and more comfortable at it, but like he's been playing basketball like since he was 4 years old. Like this is like what he was like he's always done. But like does Zion playing at this level as at the quote unquote point guard position sort of shift how you would want to build around him? Like just moving forward this summer?
Um, I no, only in the sense that if Zion was going to be the guy who you continuously decide you're going to build around and not look to move him, this is what he had to be for this team. And while he's exceeding my expectations right now with the way he's playing, I think to me the biggest thing is even when Zion previously has been able to get teammates involved, it's felt like he's either been like passing Zion or scoring Zion. It hasn't felt like every possession like he's going to do he's going to take what the defense gives him and make the right play. And that's what it feels like now. Every time he's going down the floor on offense, he's got the ball in his hands and he's making the right play versus kind of like pass or score. But I think they had to always the way to build around Zion, because it's so hard to build around a player like him, is you have to build around him being the heliocentric offense, like the guy, and go from there. And so to see him play like this and earn that is what's I think most exciting to me.
Yeah, I'm not trying to knock Willie on this as in terms of like beating a dead horse here, because there's a lot of blame that Zion has earned for himself. But you saw this under Stan Van Gundy, and it's effectively taken like 5 years. I mean, I don't even know if there's a full commitment to it yet. It's always the point Zion situation always comes out of necessity on this team rather than by design, which is, I think there are pros and cons of it because, again, of like Zion not being available at all. Like you can't build an offense that relies on Zion if he's not going to be on the court. Zion not being in shape, all that kind of stuff. At the same time, it's like, well, honestly, like let's stop failing around and get commit to it. So I would like to see it moving forward. I don't think it prevents them from making draft decisions like drafting Dylan Harper. You always draft the best possible prospect. I just don't think that's got to be something like, oh, they need a point guard, and you just like try to continue to invest assets in that position, where I think they'll be fine. You just need ball handlers, shooters, and they can be of any size. They don't got to be smaller than Zion. Thomas has a great point. Do you think he's just got to get the game reps? He's only played like 3 years in the NBA.
Talking about Zion?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's certainly fair. I mean, that's you often see these leaps from players once they feel like they start. I forget basketball. Like I feel like that's true for a lot of us in terms of what we do in our in our professional life, right? There's the whole like what you know versus what you think you know trajectory. But I think just generally speaking, I mean, we've got once you start to feel like you know what the hell you're doing and whatever your occupation is or whatever you start to play with more or whatever with more confidence and assert yourself versus just trying to take what's given to you. And so I absolutely think that more games played, getting comfortable in various game environments, various types of defenses being thrown at him, because also there's that piece as well as as you play more, the scouting reports get better, and you've got to combat the schemes and the chess matches that defenses throw at you. And so at some point, you've seen what you're going to see, and you just got to be better than what they're throwing at you. And Zion's proving that he can be.
Here's a stat for both of you guys, for Thomas and for Mason, and obviously for everybody. We talk about Trey Murphy as a guy who is getting more comfortable, getting the reps as a initiator, or getting the reps as a secondary scorer rather than just a catch and shoot guy, and someone that we talk about like, oh, he has a lot of potential left if we keep giving these opportunities, and he's going to learn from these situations. Like he's been in situations this season that he's never been in the past in terms of drawing double teams and seeing coverages where he's just, put in those situations. And everybody universally views Trey Murphy as a guy that has a lot more left to give. Like this isn't. I think a lot of people hope this is not his ceiling. He's just beginning to scratch it, right? With regards to that. Trey Murphy has played 170 more minutes in the NBA than Zion has. And that's not even counting the playoffs.
That's a crazy stat, first of all. Second is you'll be the first one to say that Trey's role, he hasn't played as many minutes as he should in the role that he needs to have to be successful in the NBA.
Right.
Or to be most successful. Whereas Zion not from really day one, but the ball's been in his hands because he's he was always supposed to be this guy, versus Trey had to earn it more, just because of where he's coming from, where he was where he was drafted and what kind of player he was. So I think there are differences there, right, based on when you receive those additional responsibilities, right?
Yeah. And it's just like, if we can talk about Trey as a guy that has a lot left to give, and obviously, like, your point about like the roles is spot on. It's like, it's insane. Trey's played 6,800 NBA minutes, and Zion played 6,650. It's like, it's what, like, that's incredibly insane. So I do, to tie it all together, I do think there's a level of, yes, like Zion has more to give because he hasn't had those minutes. He hasn't even been on the court on a consistent level. Like, how many times when you get hurt and you're coming back, like, you're spending weeks just trying to find your wind and find your rhythm again. That's before you even think about like improving, right? This system that they've worked out for him this year in terms of managing his minutes, allowing him to play hard in the minutes that he gets, kind of capping him around 32, slowly building him up. It's working. He's producing at an unreal per minute level. And I honestly hope at this point, like, this is kind of like the default situation with Zion. Now, look, I would love for him to play back-to-backs when games matter. I would love for him to be able to get into 37, 38, 39 minutes when they really need to win games. But when you look at, we've had this conversation, I think a couple pods ago. You look at Giannis when he was under Bud. There were years where he's been like 32 minutes per game or so. Like, you can have productive years, MVP caliber years, and not play at heavy minutes. And I think if that's what's best for Zion, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see him completely managed that way.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think that settles it on the aura farming. I do think I want to answer this last question here, and I think we can sign off. John is asking, do we buy into Zion tall ball team, or do we build a Zion small ball team?
Those aren't mutually exclusive, but I lean more towards the latter than the former. But only in so much as I don't think you need, if you get a real 5, I don't think you need like a traditional sized 4 to go along with that when you've got someone like Zion. But I want to make sure we're not saying, you don't need a center. Like, I mean, you need a guy that's more than Eve is this year. But I don't necessarily think they've got to go doing what they're doing right now, like with Kelly and Eve and Zion, to be successful. So I think I lean more to the small ball camp, but you need a real center, or else you're going to get bombarded on the glass.
I am very strongly in the tall ball camp, and that's because when I hear small ball, I hear Larry Nance at the 5, or Herb at the 5, or Zion at the 5, and I am just so anti that configuration. I think Zion has shown over and over again he's comfortable and capable with playing with bigs. Him and Jonas's offensive rating over all of their years on the Pelicans together was 120. Him and Steven Adams together, when he was point Zion, they literally had the best offense in the league for a 2-month stretch. I am completely okay with this idea of getting big screening bigs who can rebound and offensive rebound. And I would love for those bigs to be skilled. I would love for them to also be able to score. Because if it was that good with a guy like Steven Adams, if it's that good with a guy like JV, like imagine someone that's more skilled or I guess more athletic or more mobile, right? Those are things that I like. I really like the idea of having someone like Kelly, not necessarily Kelly himself, but someone that is 6'9", 6'10", 6'11", at that 4 spot that has ball skills, has passing skills, and can shoot. There's those guys don't grow on trees. They make a lot of money, but it would be lovely to have 2 bigs and then Zion's the shortest guy on the court because your other 2 guys are Herb Jones and Trey Murphy. Like that would be an incredible configuration in my opinion. And I don't know if they would how playoff viable it would be, but get there. Let's get there first,
That's fair. Yeah, that's where my mind keeps going to is how playoff viable is it? But yeah, they've got to get there first. So I think that's let's run before we walk, right? Or the opposite. Yeah, I think we agree in the sense that you can't do this with Zion being like or Zion or Herb or Trey being a small ball or being a 5 like that. That's not gonna work.
Yeah, and I think you're seeing across the league a proliferation of guys who are stretch fours, but also protect the rim and are also skilled and do things like Jaren Jackson, Evan Mobley, Chet Holmgren. Obviously, the Wolves had their thing going on with Cat and Rudy before they blew that up. AD hates playing the 5. Like the league wants to go back to double big configurations, and so I think even with the Celtics when they have Porzingis out there, like they can run lineups that have Porzingis and Horford out there, But obviously they have a variety of things that they can do with that team. They're very deep, but to do that and to have Zion, I think I want a team that wins by brute force. I want a team like tonight. The Pelicans, like the second half, just abused the Wolves on the offensive glass. Every opportunity, like they were coming down with something, right? I want a team that hits first, that you walk into Smoothie King Center, you're like, I do not want to play against that team because they're like, we're gonna go home with bruises. Like we're gonna need ice. We're gonna need a DMP rest. The next 2 games. Like that's the kind of team that I would like to be because when you see the Pelicans and they play those kind of teams right now, when they play Houston, when they play Orlando, when they play OKC, like those teams aren't necessarily like traditionally huge, like we're talking about, but they hit first. Like they are physical, like they're super annoying to play against, and so I would like to be a jumbo version of a team that's super annoying to play against, and I have no doubt that regardless of that construction, Zion's going to give you 60% from the floor, 25 to 30 points a night. And who knows, with this passing vision, he might give you 8 to 9 assists a night. Like that'd be insane.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like it. And you're absolutely right that Zion has shown over the last month or so the last few years. I mean, look at the other like 5s he's played with in his career. He showed even before he was this version of himself that he can create efficient offense in those kinds of configurations. And so I'm certainly open to seeing it in action. I just, if the day comes and we get so lucky that this team can make a deeper run, is that the best version of the team? I guess we'll see.
Guess we'll see. I think with that, we're going to wrap up the show. Since Jeremy's not here, I'm going to try to impersonate him and do the closing honors. We have 595 subscribers. If you tune into the show, if you're watching it on delay, if you're on your phone or in the car, wherever, if you hear us, just give us a like, give us a subscribe, bump our subscriber count out. We want to continue doing this. We want to continue bringing our stuff to your devices. And we're super glad that those of you who took their time out tonight after watching the Pelicans to hang out with us and not watch March Madness. How's that going, by the way, Mason? That's right. So we appreciate you investing time here with us instead. And we're grateful for every person that logs on. So thank you. Appreciate your time. And we will catch you next time.